biodiversity data in local decision making. It's not a final project, it's an ongoing project, so do not expect any kind of final results, preliminary results. We do cooperate with two partners, ISOE from Germany and Lund from Sweden. I will start a bit harsh. I don't know how it works here. Like, next slide, please. Yeah. Do you think that more data will somehow improve the decision making? Right? We do not think so, and that's why we do have this project, because there is enormous amount of data, at least in Europe. We have heard before. For some reason, they are still underused for technical reasons, personal reasons, maybe some legal reasons, and also data doesn't stay alone. They are just shaped by politics and some kind of local priorities. And Enable Local, that the project is trying basically to look at this gap between what data exists and what local decision really actually need, and tries to understand how governance structures and institutions can help this. No, that was too much. Oh, all right. Yeah, sorry. Yes, perfect. In other words, we do have some kind of data supply. We know all of these huge databases, local, regional, or even global. And then we do have data demand, local conservation, land use decisions. But this machine is not really oiled. It doesn't work as it could be. That's why we are talking about this kind of gap in, let's say, in these two wheels. And Enable Local is trying to find to understand what's really what's really the gap between these two. Please, next one. So there are three specific things what I wanted to talk. We do have 3 case studies in Europe. One is in Czechia. It's huge forest. Second one is in Frankfurt. It's apple orchards. And the third one is very sketchy parts of the close by Lund University, conserved because of the wild bees. This doesn't seem like the environment is super different. However, we do share the same thing, that each place somehow, we don't know how the local biodiversity data really works. So that's why we have contacted more than 150 stakeholders and developed some kind of framework to ask what could be helpful for them to understand how people really works with the data and what are their needs. Yeah, perfect. So 3 activities. The first one, second one, and third one are already done. The 4th, 5th, and 6th are just waiting to be done because we are in the middle of this ongoing project. And we are trying to use, let's say, mixed methods to ask really the main question, if there are gaps and what gaps, how to gaps really fill. And that's why we have used more like quantitative, because the survey and workshop partly is quantitative, and also qualitative data analysis and features to really understand this kind of question. And also the third specific of this project is that we have used user stories, which are known in computer science, just to really ask and point to these local decision makers and to really link their needs to these decision making or all the data what we are asking for. I'm already done, right? Yeah. Thank you for Biodiversity for sponsoring us. Thank you, our local funding agencies. If you want to see more, Enable Local website. Thank you, our colleagues from ISOE and Lund. And thank you also, the belongs to you, for listening. Thanks a lot. Thank you, David.
Thank you very much. I did forget to introduce myself. I'm Andre Zerger from the Accent Living Australia as well.
Thanks a lot. Okay, sure. I'm using this time to also introduce myself. My name is Aydin Niamir. I'm based in Frankfurt, working at Senckenberg Institutes. Senckenberg is also the home to data knowledge management unit of IPBES, and IPBES is intergovernmental platform for science policy platform for biodiversity and ecosystem services. What I would like to share very brief with you is our findings or kind of our observation during the last 10, 11 years, working with IPBES in implementing FAIR and CARE principles. In science policy platforms, it's very important, and it's very bold and highlighted in a data management policy of the platform, that the decisions or the outcome of the assessment should not only be based on a scientific knowledge. So the other knowledge system should also be considered. So in IPBES, we are dealing with different knowledge systems. That's why FAIR data principles are there, but it's not enough, and we need to adopt other principles. I'm pretty sure that everybody knows FAIR. Next slide, please. But I just wanted to say that FAIR principles also have several sub-principles. We all know the big ones, FAR, but then it's good to know that they are break it down to the sub-principles. These principles being published in 2016. So we are talking about a publication 8 years ago about the data, and we are talking now about data. So just keep it in mind. Next slide, please. And this is a CARE data governance principles published in 2020. More or less same structure. They have also sub-principles. So please also familiar yourself with these principles whenever you deal with indigenous data and knowledge. And now the next slide. This is where I would like to just summarize my talk. Crossing FAIR data principles in implementation of the FAIR principles in the platform in the last 10 years on 12 assessments, and crossing that with the CARE principles, colleagues and we run a very extensive matrix. We realized that for some of these principles, those are in gray, they can be implemented independently. For those who are highlighted in blue, they actually kind of promoting each other. There are some aligned, and the implementation of for one that also promotes the other parts. But there are parts, the orange ones, that has very important contradictions. And as you could imagine, it's mostly coming from the accessibility part. And then looking at the authority to control that we should respect for indigenous knowledge. Last slide. So we are wrapping up this in a kind of a proposal for the governments to consider, but in general, the way forward is that we need to move from coexistence to co-design. So we need to think when we moving forward to have these two concepts and these diverse knowledge systems when we deal with the management principles. We need to have more adaptive and inclusive design. Usually, platforms like IPCC and IPBES could prefer or could provide a good examples to be more like careful platforms to also show how that can be done. And definitely we do need more type of conversation like this one. And by that, I thank you very much.
Thank you very much. The matrix is excellent.
I just hold that.
Whatever's easier.
Oh.
You've got 10 minutes.
Oh.
Right?
I hope. Yeah. My arm will get tired. Okay, well, I'm Catherine Jardine. I work with Birds Canada on our two sort of data platforms. One is the MODIS wildlife tracking system, which I'm going to talk about tomorrow, and the other is Nature Counts, which is for our biodiversity observation data. And so today I'm going to talk about the Nature Counts app and how we're using that to incentivize FAIR principles for projects. Next. So I really don't need to tell anybody at this conference the importance of making biodiversity data accessible. So like, I think we're all kind of agreed on that framework. The question is left with us is like, why so many projects are not making their data accessible? Because of course the goal is to meet FAIR principles. Oh, sorry, forward. Yeah. To ensure data can be accessed in its raw form or through decision support tools. And many large-scale, yeah, oh, you're good, you're on it, okay. Many large-scale monitoring programs are already meeting FAIR principles. These are sort of the big projects, iNaturalist or eBird. These ones have the capacity to meet those FAIR principles. But there's many smaller projects that are out there that there's like hundreds, potentially thousands of these that are more targeted. They tend to be targeted in time frame. Maybe they're a grad student in geographic scope, looking at a specific area or on a particular species. And they're collecting very valuable data and oftentimes data that's filling gaps in those bigger projects. However, there's a barrier between those smaller projects and FAIR principles. And that barrier is really because they may know that it's the right thing to do. They may even support it in principle, but they might be operating in very limited capacity because moving to meet FAIR principles takes time, it takes money, it takes technical know-how and tools. And the fact is that not every single project has these resources available. And I've seen some conversation at this conference so far about removing some of the blockers that are between these smaller projects and FAIR repositories. A lot of those focus on making it easier for people to upload existing data, packages that change existing data, which everybody should do. But I'm going to talk about a slightly different solution. And what we've built at Birds Canada is the Nature Counts platform. So this was originally built to meet our own internal data management needs. So Canada is a very big place. We had dozens of monitoring projects within Birds Canada, and we needed a way to manage all of that data. So Nature Counts is working to meet both the needs of data contributors who collect and share their data and the data users to access that for research and decision support tools, either in raw form or through interpreted products. So what we need for Target 21 is that share. So we want to get to the share project part. But for smaller projects, that's less important to them. Instead, we need to meet the needs of those contributors and collectors with tools that give them things like time saving, cost savings, improving the experience for volunteers or researchers, and reduce errors and reduce efforts. And those will then in turn help us meet those FAIR principles. And so this is where we have worked to develop the Nature Counts app. So the Nature Counts app has, go ahead, next one, a flexible architecture to support numerous protocols. So this is dedicated to structured biodiversity data collection, and it can be tailored to projects of any size for nearly any monitoring program. And really, the tools have been built to meet the needs of data collectors. So in terms of the tools, we have basic checklists, right? Everybody's familiar with a checklist. What you would expect from a mobile app, GPS, bilingual, offline support, all of those different things. But one of the differences for ours is that you can customize what variables you're collecting within your checklist. So you can have, for example, our Western Screech Owl project is monitoring 13 different variables for every record that they do, and those can all be rendered in these checklists. We also have a new point count feature. So point counts, for those of you who are not bird nerds, are a major biodiversity monitoring tool in the bird world. And to our knowledge, this is the first interface that digitizes this largely analog process previously. So you can drop pins on satellite imagery, and it will automatically record your distance interval and your time interval. About 1,000 papers are published every year using point count data, and a lot of that's not making it into FAIR repos. So if we can give people tools to allow them to digitize their point count data at the onset, it helps power that process. We also do stop within route surveys for things like the North American Breeding Bird Survey, so you're able to string multiple stops along a route together. And one of the main tenets of this app is the idea of custom variables. So we have the ability for you to define custom variables. For example, this one, they want to know wetland type within 100 meters. And so when you're setting up your protocol, you can define that. Those custom variables can be done at any level. You can have them at before your survey, you can have them after your survey, you can have them at your station. You can even have them tied to the exact pin of the observation. So really trying to make this as flexible as possible so it can support pretty much any observation-based monitoring program. And all of these features share the same data architecture. And so what having that same architecture means is that setting up mobile data entry for a project is a matter of hours. So you create a project, you define a protocol. So this one, for example, is a 5-minute point count protocol that has its different bins. It's collecting breeding evidence and whether or not the record is a duplicate. And then once that protocol is defined, it's automatically rendered in the app. The user can go in, say, hey, I'm in this region. The app lists all the different projects that are in the region, and they can choose one and begin to participate. So it also helps with discoverability for citizen science projects. We also have the ability to have private projects for cases where those are needed. And we're working on building a self-directed user interface to do this process now. And so once set up, you can go to the next slide, the app eliminates the labor-intensive and tedious process of data transcription. So I speak from experience. My very first job out of university was transcribing paper point counts like this, and I promise I didn't develop this app out of rage, but this took 2 months to transcribe all this data. And that's 2 months of time that the analysis was delayed and somebody had to be paid, when if you had direct data entry, that would be a huge amount of savings. So this is incentive. This is incentive to remove barriers in terms of cost and time and errors, and that can help individual projects. And so all data is then instantaneously uploaded to the Nature Counts repository and can be used immediately for analysis. So it also reduces time. And then the bonus is that the data can be automatically incorporated into a FAIR repo. So it can go into decision support tools, and the raw data can be accessed and downloaded by the broader conservation community. It can be shared with GBIF where permissions allow, and all quickly and easily because the data has been standardized from the moment of collection. And so the idea behind this, if you go to the next slide, is to really simplify the process of getting your data into the hands of the data user. So your traditional process would, you have your observer, they would take paper data, they would transcribe it into a local database, then the local database would have to be modified into a format that would be compatible with a GBIF or Nature Counts itself. And so then you go to a metadata database, and then you go to the user. And that's the step that often gets lost. So with what we're trying to do is it goes from the observer straight into Nature Counts, and then from Nature Counts, it can immediately go into the hands of the data user, and we're taking a lot of that burden away from projects. So I've experienced this play out in practice. So within my own organization, we have dozens of projects, and some of them I had hounded for years to get them into a FAIR repo. And I kept hearing from project managers, I don't have time for that, I don't have time for that, I don't have capacity, I don't have money, I don't have time for that. And these are people I have pull with, okay? And they were not doing it. And then we developed the app, and those same projects started knocking on my door. It's like, can we get in on that? Can we have that? I want that, because it saves them time, it saves them money, it makes their job easier. And even since releasing the app, we built this for an internal use, and we've had increasing, I've been inundated with requests from external small projects asking to utilize the app for their data collection. So with that, those data can then flow into, if you go to the next one, a massive database. So this powers conservation research. So in Canada, Nature Counts is the largest biodiversity database that we have. It's about 360 million records now, about 1,000 data sets. It's growing rapidly. And it has refined data sharing permissions to support projects that have more nuanced data sharing needs, so things like Indigenous data sovereignty, projects on private land, sensitive species. And in my talk tomorrow, if you want to come at 12:10, I'm going to talk about how we're then using this data set to meet the goals of the biodiversity framework, and how it's tying into different decision support tools. But all that's predicated on making that valuable data first entered into these repos. And doing it from the onset has seemed, from my experience, to be the most effective way to remove the barriers that a lot of these smaller projects face when it comes to making their data fair. And so with that, if you want to go on that, you can learn more. You can download the app from either Play Store or the App Store. You can check out naturecounts.ca. You can download a project, noodle with it, and yeah, feel free to find me and chat with me if you have any questions.
Thanks. Very nice.
Oh, yeah, you want that back? Thank you.
Welcome, Steph. I'll let you introduce yourself.
Not my one. Because they are rejected before. Okay, yeah. My name is Stefan Weise. Please excuse my voice. I hope it will work for the next 8 minutes. I will report about a small study in which we did a peer assessment of plant genetic resources data. Next slide. I'm working in the field of plant genetic resources collections, and around the world, we have about almost 6 million accessions of plant genetic resources that are being maintained under ex situ conditions by international gene banks, regional gene banks, national gene banks, and hundreds of further PGR collections such as botanical gardens or university collections. So this is a huge amount of material that is being preserved. Next. And data, of course, is crucial. The better the material is described, the better we can maintain PGR material, share material, and also exploit it for both breeding and research purposes. However, the utilization of PGR remains low when data is difficult to discover, assess, reuse, or integrate, and we have lots of challenges with regard of the data. For example, challenges referring to data acquisition, data handling, data management, and data sharing. Next. And on top, we have the FAIR principles. FAIR principles, you all know this, are a widely accepted benchmark for assessing and refining data management procedures. This is great. And increasingly, FAIR compliant data management protocols are also required by funding agencies, which is also fine in principle, but sometimes it does not make so much sense, which is a bit unfortunate. And we observe increasingly colleagues that always claim to make their data fair without knowing what this means, in fact. And because applying FAIR principles to PGR data is much more complex, we have a very close connection between the digital data and the physical biological material it describes. We have different legal frameworks in different countries that need to be taken into account, and different infrastructures for the cross-border exchange of both material and data. That's why we wanted to conduct a small study and investigate the extent to which FAIR principles can be applied to PGR data, and also to investigate the extent to which such an application makes sense. Next. We did this using the example of a European data aggregator system, EURISCO, which is the European Search Catalog for Plant Genetic Resources. The system documents more than 2 million accessions of PGR accessions, PGR material. And there are more than 430 PGR collections in whole Europe that report to the system. And the data set comprises data about more than 45,000 species for which material is being maintained. And it also covers material which is being maintained ex situ and also under in situ conditions.
And for the assessment itself, we used a FAIR data maturity model because, FAIR principles are recommendations, not strict rules. So there are many different interpretations. And that's why the RDA FAIR working group has developed a set of core evaluation criteria that comprise guidelines and a checklist for implementing indicators. In total, the data maturity model that we used comprises 41 indicators with different priorities from essential to useful. And we used those indicators to assess the data in this Central European PGR catalog. And we applied those indicators to 3 different data domains: ex situ passport data, in situ crop wild relative passport data, and phenotypic data. The assessment, fast. The assessment itself was done by means of expert assessments on a quantitative and also on a qualitative level. Next. I don't have any time to show and discuss the results. Just one very simple example: findability. With regard to metadata implementation, there are 2 indicators that demand that metadata is identified by a persistent identifier and also by a globally unique identifier. But we have lots of challenges to cope with. There's a very close link between the digital data and the physical PGR object, as mentioned before. There are truly unique and persistent identifiers for PGR data records and aggregator systems. They really exist, but usually they are not used outside the systems, but only inside the information systems. In reality, most persons working with PGR data use the identifiers of the physical material. But they refer to the physical material only, and they can't be resolved globally, even the DOIs that are increasingly being assigned for PGR accessions. Such material DOIs, they can help to resolve, for example, a passport data set within an information system, but the same DOI can also identify data sets in other PGR information systems. And you can see this on the right-hand side. And I used one DOI to get passport data in 4 different aggregator systems: Eurisco, Genesis, GLIS, and ViewS. Next. So we applied all those 41 indicators to ex situ, no, not yet, please. Ex situ passport data, in situ records, and phenotypic data now. And you can see the results in those radar plots, where you can see the extent to which all the indicators are fulfilled. And you can, next, you can see that it looks quite similar for ex situ passport data and in situ passport data. This is because both data standards share the same basis. Next, it looks different for phenotypic data. And by the way, phenotypic data in PGR is a mess. Next. All the details you can read in our new paper that hopefully will be published very soon. The question remains, is fairness everything? No, of course not. Even if a PGR data set is fully fair, it's not guaranteed that the PGR data can be used efficiently, because fair compliance mainly refers to infrastructure identifiers, metadata, but there are many more things that determine the use of PGR data. Next. Don't get me wrong, fair is very valuable. I really like those principles, but it's not sufficient alone. Context matters. PGR data in aggregator systems is never static. There are many domain-specific constraints and practical realities that need to be taken into account. There are trade-offs between technical solutions and the usability. So achieving fairness in the PGR community is mainly a social and institutional challenge. Most of all, we need capacity building and training. And besides all the technical standards, we need to convince and train providers and curators of data. There are many more things beyond fair. Data quality control and validation checks, they are as important as fair compliance itself. Data must meet the actual research needs, and there are many legal and ethical constraints that need to be taken into account. Next. This work was mainly carried out by our doctoral student, and you can read all the details in the publication. Thanks.
Stefan. Join us.
Yeah. Everyone, just waiting for my slide to come up. Was the presentation that was shown previously? Okay, good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to present to you today the NFDI for Earth label as a tool to harmonize Earth system science data repositories. My name is Jonas Grieb. I'm from Senckenberg, the Leibniz Institution for Biodiversity and Earth System Research. I'm based in Frankfurt, Germany, and I'm actually giving this talk on behalf of my colleague, Robert Brilka, who's the main author, but couldn't be here at the conference. And yeah, furthermore, there were important contributions to this talk by Ronny Guy, Klaus Weiland, Claudia Müller, and Stefan Frickenhaus. And yeah, before I present to you the tool, I want to show to you the project in which this is embedded. Next slide, please. So this is embedded in the so-called NFDI, the National Research Data Infrastructure in Germany. That is yeah, an initiative with the goal to establish research data management practices and improve data sharing across all disciplines in Germany with the motivation to enable better data reuse, reproducibility, and support of the FAIR principles. And yeah, this is structured in domain-specific consortia, which address the specific research data management needs in the domains. And one of those is the so-called NFDI for Earth, which is the consortium for supporting the Earth system science research, which includes many subdisciplines, so from hydrospheric to geospheric, atmospheric research until research of the biosphere. And next slide, please. And especially in this domain and also in the scope of the German research data management landscape, we have the challenge that actually many repositories already exist where researchers can deposit their data. However, there is a heterogeneous landscape. So these repositories differ in the features and metadata standards and APIs which they support. So interoperability is still an issue. And yeah, this makes, for example, integrating data across the repositories difficult. And what we also acknowledged as a challenge is that there are existing frameworks which go towards or support repository harmonization, like the Quartz seal or the Nestor seal. However, these certifications are first not specific to the Earth system science domain, and second, also often include an extensive certification process, which is difficult to achieve, especially for smaller repositories. Please. And yeah, therefore we have developed the NFDI for Earth label. It's a tool to assess especially interoperability and sustainability of such data repositories. Yeah, and for this we had to define certain indicators. What does interoperability mean in this domain and in this context? And the development of these indicators was also a community embedded process. So we were benefiting of this large NFDI initiative that I mentioned. NFDI for Earth consists of over 60 German research organizations which we could involve in this process of developing this label or assessment process for repositories. Next slide, please. Yeah, so now coming more concretely, how do we assess? Oh, one back again. No. In the other direction, we were. Yeah, we were here. re3 data. So we're with the assessment we're building on re3 data as an established service. So I hope many of you know it already. It's a web registry of research data repositories, quite large. It currently lists over 3,000 data repositories from across the world and from all domains. And for us, it was beneficial to make use of this existing service because it provides unique identifiers for repositories, provides machine-readable metadata about some capabilities, what the repositories have. So do they provide DOIs? Which metadata standards do they support? Which types of APIs do they offer? And for us, it was also important to thus strengthening re3 data as an existing infrastructure and make sure that repositories which we assess have their information in re3 data up to date. That, please. Then the concrete and label assessment workflow has three parts. First is the assessment of the information that is stored in re3 data, which we can automatically retrieve from their API, and then check it against some normative requirements or indicators that we have set. So which metadata standards or APIs are considered important for data repositories in this domain. Then the second part is complementary to this, a self-assessment where repository providers are supposed to provide some additional information, especially on the sustainability of the repository, because even the fairest repository is not great if it gets shut down tomorrow because there's no funding anymore. And then the third part of the assessment is the Fuji assessment. So Fuji is a tool. It is one of the established fair checkers tool, and they are not on the level of data repositories, but of individual data sets. This we can use to check really fairness of some exemplary data sets in a repo and then cross-validate this with the information or capabilities a repository claims to support in regards of fairness. Next slide, please. Yeah, I don't have time to go into the details of all the metrics that we've come up with. This is just to give you an overview of how this is structured, and we also match them to the relating fair principles. And next slide, please. This is just to show that the NFDF Earth label is a web tool that is now in production since a few months. So repository representatives can interact with it online. They have to fill out certain forms, but we try to keep it really lightweight. And next slide, please. We have in these few months already assessed more than 10 research data repositories, of which around half of those have successfully obtained the label. The other half has not obtained it, but we are also in contact with them and provide them recommendations what they could do to improve, for example, their interoperability. Next slide, please. With this, I'm already coming to the outlook into the future. So on the one hand, we are currently in contact with similar consortia in Germany, so similar initiatives to discuss, to apply this approach of assessing and harmonizing research data repositories also in other domains, limited to this Earth system domain. We're even considering to do it as an FDI-wide service, so this would mean across all disciplines, where we would then include domain-specific profiles as part of the metrics. And additionally, we're working together also with the developers of the Fuji tool that I mentioned to have more domain-specific extensions as part of the dataset fair evaluation. Other ideas we are thinking about is, of course, scaling up, so not limiting this to the German level, but possibly assess repositories on a European or global scale. And please. some further internal goals that we have is to strengthen the dataset level assessment. So what I mentioned, assessing the individual datasets and also their usability. Then we want to establish a continuous feedback loop with those repositories which have already obtained the information and make sure this is always up to date. And finally, we're thinking also about including metadata quality checks in the whole workflow of the NFDI for label assessment. And with this, I would like to acknowledge all collaborators and supporters, and thank you for your attention.
Yes.
Well, thank you for inviting me to this session. So I'm not in the governance, but I'd like to know more about this. But I will talk about how to make data accessible. And that has a lot to do with FAIR principle. So PRATS is a non-profit organization based in Switzerland. So we started in 2004 as a research project, and in 2008 we got incorporated. We made a foundation. And we are in Switzerland because I'm Swiss, but more like because Switzerland has specific copyright law, which allows you to do much more than most other places. In our DNA, from the very beginning, was data sharing. So I'm a taxonomist. I worked in Brazil, and the problem was to get, as a Brazilian, data from the north, access to publications, and work there the same way you could do living in the north. So we have an office in Brazil. It's like 8 people now. They do a lot of processing. And of course, they are cheaper than working in Europe. But the important thing is they learn the technology and they become self-contained eventually and know how to process all this literature we have. So PRATS' mission is to ignite the global movement to discover, liberate, and make accessible the world's biodiversity data, unlocking the knowledge hidden in scientific publications anywhere, at any time, and to pioneer the future of semantically enhanced publishing. So we want to make all data accessible, but we want to get rid of this legacy stuff that takes a lot of time to make it much better in the future, okay? So in a nutshell, we are not librarians, we are not publishers, but we are interested in data. So as a scientist, I publish, I want to make my data accessible to add to the knowledge graph. And so we take it out. So for that, we build like pretty sophisticated workflows to convert, find PDFs, convert them, make the data fair. So we take parts of documents out, treatments, or the figures, tables, put them in a repository, Zenodo in this case, which provides fair data with very rich metadata. Then we make the data accessible, so it goes to GBIF, and in GBIF it feeds into the research data lifecycle so people can use it. So this is more or less where we stand right now. We processed 130,000 articles. We fished out more than 1.1 million treatments. Those are descriptions of species. We had like close to 800,000 figures, 100,000 tables, and 2 million material citations. And you see the figures are a little bit lower in those reusing the data, and that's because of quality control. So our impact is that we work a lot with GBIF from the very beginning. So we introduce new data types, like treatment database. We are, in a funny way, the largest data set provider with close to 50% of data sets. In Zenodo, that's a repository, which has been a generalist repository, which became a very specific, it can be a very specific, domain-specific repository with metadata, specific metadata. We spearheaded the development of the biodiversity PMC, which makes our data accessible through all the huge life science community, so it's cross-domain. And then, as I say, we provide a lot of data. So we know we need to talk to people. So one way to do it is to build like actions. So one was together in 2014, the Buchholz Declaration, open access knowledge management sharing. So which essentially brought together about 300 people and institutions, said, we make sure our data is open, and we will say now fair. And then last summer, we had the business roadmap, which was an assessment of the Buchholz Declaration, and where we find out the big gap in our liberating of data is not specimens, is not genes, is what's in publication. So we started this roadmap, 10-year roadmap, to make all this data accessible. So, and I will talk about the learning activities. So we have to get people involved. And I will talk about this, although I'm not the expert, because Julia Chora, the really capable and really fantastic teacher and head of our department, could not be here, so I'll talk about this briefly. So the goal of the learning with activities, the discover known biodiversity, train, equip researchers, engage the community into the verification of data, so teach them what is fair, how to do it, increase the number of fair data repository users, increase the number of data curators, and build partnerships with librarians and scientists. Yeah. So you can go on our website, plots.org. You can find access to the learning modules. You can go. So the learning material is very modular. So there are modules from introduction to very detailed activities and how to do quality control and all that. So, but you can normally start from finding out what the concepts are, and it can move into the next steps. Okay. So we use Classroom. That's one way to organize that. In a classroom, there are learning units, there are practical exercises, the support material, and there are links. If you're more interested, you can go there and learn that. The next. More recently, we worked with Elixir. That's the life science, very big life science organization in Europe, and build a module in the new biodiversity thing. So essentially, it follows all the way Elixir does work. So Elixir people can go and learn how to deal with biodiversity data. So you can also find this course. Next one. So these are, then we also through COVID, we started to produce MOOCs. So essentially it's online courses. So people come in and you don't need to come to us. They can just do the courses. The next. So these are the more favorite things. It's like the face-to-face meetings. And we had the spring one, which is one of the most stunning things. We had a course here in Colombia, and we had it open for 30 people, and 280 people did apply for that. And for us, it's really, really good, because finally, some people think it's important to get liberate data from publication. The next. And so the strategy is not just to teach individual groups and then they go home, but actually teach the teachers. So this is the upper part. So we hope we can create more nuclei, which then go ahead. Yeah. And in the training, it's a certification course, because if you want to produce good data which is defined, so you can go through these courses and you get certificates that you did and successfully did that. So you do this exercises, and then they will be checked on our end, and you get your certificates. Yeah. So the courses we run now, you see, it's like global. So we have people from all around. We had courses in South Africa, we had Brazil, Colombia, and in Europe. So it's slowly picking up. Okay. And then we have another course for those interested next week in months in the Botanic Garden in Berlin. So it's a nice thing if you are interested. If maybe there's an open thing. Then another way we talk to work with students. So we start get students involved in the PhD project, support them, and then the last one is which is important. So we have a service you can go and ask how I can participate, but you can also ask questions. So there's always a staff around which actually helps you to answer questions and move. That's my 1 minute left.
Thank you, Don. That was excellent. Last
Hi everyone. Thank you for persisting. Cup of wine for everyone at the live decision. I hope. Okay. Talking about the impact of proportion of the National Area Protector on biodiversity laws. This is the second chapter of my PhD thesis for Universidad Católica de Chile and Universidad de los Andes. Next, please. Next. Okay. Next. Thank you. Okay. During the decades, the biodiversity loss measuring for the Rayleigh's index shows a decline. So what's going on with the deforestation? Some of the countries around the world show that reduce the recovery loss. But what's going on with this type of programs? Propose target environmental agreements such as Aichi Target 11, HGD, next one, and Global Biodiversity Framework conserve 30% of land, waters, and seas. What's going on with this type of environmental agreements? Next, please. So we propose this study is there is insufficient evidence related with what's going on with the increased protected areas related biodiversity loss. Is reducing the biodiversity loss, is halting? I don't know. We propose what is the impact of strictly protected areas, categories 1 and 2, the UCN, on biodiversity loss, but estimated by 3 types of index measuring this loss. There are a few mechanisms through which protected areas can be shown what is the causal effect to create new and more protected areas. Next, please. Our hypothesis is related with the increase in the area and the area of terrestrial protected areas per country can improve or maintain this measure of the biodiversity index. We hope to say the index maintain or inclusive improve. Next, please. Next. What's going on with the effectiveness of protected areas? The measure of the studies related with the effectiveness of protected areas is related with deforestation, extraction of forest resources, governance, and inclusive poverty. That's one. That's one. So, protected areas are divided or classified in categories from 1 to 6. We grouped the first 2 categories, 1 and 2, in strictly protected areas, and the 3 and 6 not protected areas. We classify 2 groups for measuring what is the causal effect of increased protected areas in strictly protected areas. These categories have specific conservation targets, a restricted intervention of humans. Next one, please. What is the data? Data, we use data related to protected areas and protected planet. We use Rayleigh index, biodiversity intactness index, and species habitat index. In the next section, on the previous section, the researchers are talking about these type of indices. Each one index have a measure different types of biodiversity: extinction, biodiversity, and habitat. 3 types of measure of biodiversity. That's one. We have a statistical analysis. We use the data frame from the 2001 and 2004. If you can see, that biodiversity index is decreasing. If you compare the data, years, we lost biodiversity measuring in habitat, biodiversity, and in Rayleigh's index. But what's going on? We have the protected areas are increased. We have a problem with this? Maybe, I don't know. Next one, please. If you can check the accumulated percentage strictly protected areas around the world, you can see 2001 and 2014, some countries increased protected areas. Okay. Next one, please. What is the identification strategy? We use difference and difference, but we implemented a novel methodology. This is related with the continuous treatment, because the increase in protected areas is year by year. But some countries don't increase protected areas in 1 year, but the next 3 years after increase protected areas, and the previous years 0. What's going on with this increase in some countries? The model is proposed with the biodiversity indicator by country and year. We construct that panel data related with the biodiversity index, percentage of protected areas, country, year. We have 15 years for analysis. We use variables related with the GDP, tree cover loss, control corruption, mean temperature, population density, and agriculture, forestry, and fishing percentage of GDP. We have fixed effects and control for country, and the effect of protected areas on biodiversity is the beta 1. This one, please. Well, these are the results. We have a problem with the 2Y fixed effects. When we control with the country year, we have static results. Yeah. So if you check statistical significant, everyone, oh, amazing. But except biodiversity intelligence. This is when you increase or no increase, static, 1 to 0. This one. This one. This one. This one. Okay. The treatment is increased protected areas based on using category strictly protected areas, 1E, 1B, and 2. The potential outcomes is biodiversity loss, measuring for species habitat index, biodiversity index index, and release index. Next one, please. Okay. We don't have average results. For the 15 years, we don't have an average result, but the average is not statistically significant, but we have dynamic effects. What's going on with dynamic effects? After 9 years, we have a result, or we have a positive results for release index. Okay, but this means that when the countries increase 1% in strictly protected areas, the release index improved 0.9% in this type of index. Then the others biodiversity index is not a statistically significant results. But next one, please. You can see the dynamics effects. 9 years after, you can find an effect of increased protected areas. Next one, please. So, future research about the protected areas, of the effectiveness of protected areas, looking for examining what it is taxonomic groups. You can use taxonomic groups and classify another type of index, but the effectiveness of protected areas usually use protected area management effectiveness. This is administrative valuation related what is the effectiveness of protected areas, but the main target of protected areas what is conservation of the biodiversity. So in this case, this one. This one?
Oh, well, thank you very much for joining us and for the presentations, the great presentations. So I've just been asked to remind people there is a poster session downstairs starting now, and apparently there are drinks. I think the word cocktails was used. I'm not sure if that's accurate or not. So don't hold me to that. But also there's no rush to leave this room. So it'd be great to offer up the floor to some questions or comments from anyone, if you have some, and potentially online as well. Oh, look, I'll start. I think it was Jonas. There's quite a lot of presentations, but so the certification, that's just applying to German repositories.
It was developed within a German project, so at the moment we focus on this, on
Right.
repositories which are important for the German data landscape, maybe we call it like this, but yeah, we're definitely thinking about broadening the scope, since I think many aspects are not limited to country boundaries, clearly.
I'm not so familiar with the earth science landscape, but I was amazed how many repositories you had compared to the biodiversity landscape in any one nation. Any other questions? Okay. Well, look, that probably brings us to a natural end. Again, thank you very much for making an effort to both present and join us today. Would you join me in thanking everyone?